the days that followed, the investigation entered a far more complex phase. What initially appeared to be a shocking, yet straightforward criminal case began to reveal layers of uncertainty, contradictions, and unanswered questions. Investigators focused their attention not only on physical evidence, but also on patterns. Patterns in behavior, movement, and timing. Witness statements were collected and reviewed. Some accounts aligned neatly, others did not. Small discrepancies emerged. On their own, they seemed insignificant, but taken together, they suggested that the events leading up to the victim's death may not have unfolded as smoothly as first assumed. One key challenge for investigators was the absence of clear transitional evidence. There was no definitive proof showing where the fatal act took place, nor how the body was transported afterward. The lack of extensive drag marks or signs of a prolonged struggle raised difficult questions. If there was no violent resistance, what circumstances allowed the crime to occur so quietly? Was the victim caught completely off guard? Or did the situation involve an element of trust? These questions lingered, without immediate answers. As forensic analysis continued, authorities attempted to reconstruct a timeline. They examined daily routines, recent interactions, and subtle changes in behavior reported by those close to the victim. Certain details stood out. Ordinary moments, phone calls, errands, brief encounters were re-examined with extraordinary scrutiny. Because in cases like this, the truth often hides within the mundane. Yet even with careful reconstruction, the timeline remained fragmented. Critical gaps persisted. Public attention intensified. Media coverage expanded rapidly, bringing both increased awareness and additional pressure. Speculation began to spread. Theories emerged, some grounded in evidence, others fueled by fear, rumor, or imagination. For investigators, this created a delicate balance. They needed information from the public, but also had to protect the integrity of the case. Every detail released carried consequences. Every silence invited interpretation. Despite extensive efforts, certain questions refused to be resolved. No clear motive had been firmly established. No single sequence of events could fully explain how the crime was executed without leaving more obvious traces. What was missing became just as important as what had been found. And in that absence, the case took on a haunting quality. As time passed, the investigation moved forward, but not toward closure. Instead, it entered a prolonged state of uncertainty. Leads were followed. Some ended abruptly, others faded quietly. Yet the case itself did not disappear. It remained open, suspended between known facts and unresolved possibilities. What this case ultimately reveals is not only the brutality of a crime, but the limits of certainty. Even with forensic science, even with careful analysis, some truths remain elusive. And sometimes, the most unsettling aspect is not what we know, but what we never will. As the investigation drew to a close, there was one internal assessment that investigators gradually reached consensus on. This was not a crime driven by impulse. It was not the result of rage, jealousy, or revenge. And it was not triggered by a personal dispute between the perpetrator and the victim. Instead, it was classified as a highly antisocial crime. In cases like this, the motivation does not originate from emotional conflict. It originates from intent. The purpose of the act was not to harm a specific individual, but to carry out the act itself. The victim, in this context, was not the target, but the means. This distinction fundamentally changed how investigators understood the case. Based on the methodical nature of the crime, the absence of impulsive violence, and the level of control demonstrated throughout, police began to consider a possibility that was deeply unsettling: that the perpetrator may not have been a repeat offender, not because he lacked opportunity, not because he feared detection, and not because he was intercepted by law enforcement, but because the act itself had already fulfilled its purpose. In other words, this crime may have been committed not to escalate, not to repeat, but to complete something. This assessment placed the case into a category that is both rare and extremely difficult to resolve. Even decades later, the case continues to leave behind a series of questions that remain unanswered. How was it possible to carry out such extensive dismemberment within a densely populated city without drawing attention? How could the perpetrator transport remains multiple times across public spaces without being noticed? Why were the remains boiled? This was not a necessary step for concealment, nor was it required for disposal. It suggests intention beyond practicality. But what that intention was has never been conclusively determined. Why were the remains scattered across multiple locations? Why take the additional risk of repeated disposal rather than a single act? And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, why has no similar crime ever surfaced again? No copycat, no confirmed recurrence, no identifiable pattern, just one case. And then silence. Over the years, numerous theories have been proposed. Some focused on professional background, others on psychological profile. Some suggested specialized knowledge, others emphasized emotional detachment. Yet none of these theories could be fully substantiated. There was no confession, no forensic breakthrough, no witness who could definitively identify a suspect. The case gradually transitioned from an active investigation into an unresolved record, a file that could be reopened but never advanced. The Nanjing Dismemberment Case is not remembered solely because of its brutality. It is remembered because it defies conventional frameworks of criminal behavior. It does not conform to narratives of anger, revenge, or chaos. Instead, it presents a form of violence that is controlled, calculated, and disturbingly restrained. A crime that leaves behind not excess, but absence. What makes this case especially haunting is not what is known, but what is missing. There is no confirmed crime scene, no definitive timeline of events, no clear moment of confrontation. The victim likely entered the situation without realizing that danger was imminent, and the perpetrator exited the crime without leaving behind the traces investigators depend on. This case reminds us of a difficult truth, that not all crimes are loud, not all violence announces itself, and not all perpetrators appear monstrous. Some exist quietly, blend seamlessly into ordinary life, and leave behind no visible disruption, except for what cannot be undone. The winter of 1996 ended long ago. The city changed, the campus changed, generations passed, but this case has never truly concluded. It remains suspended in time, not because it lacks significance, but because the truth may have vanished along with the person who carried it. Some cases fade with time. Others remain unresolved because the answers were taken away forever. This is one of those cases, and it is not over because it never truly ended.